In this lecture, let us discuss pulse code modulation. So, pulse code modulation is a method to convert an analog information into digital form. We have already talked about one method of converting analog information into digital form, and that is delta modulation. So, this delta modulation is a very simple technique by which one can represent analog messages in the form of sequence of positive and negative pulses, which is what eventually transmitted onto a channel. And let us say you can carry out digital communication this way. So another method of doing this, which is in fact somewhat more popular, is the pulse code modulation, by which you are partly familiar in the context of analog to digital conversions in other courses. Okay, and that's what we will discuss in this lecture in the context of digital communication. Okay, pulse code modulation, PCM. So like delta modulation, this is also a digital pulse modulation scheme. Digital pulse modulation scheme. But the approach is quite different, as I will show in the following block diagram. So you have the message signal M of t. Okay, so you start with the message signal which is sampled by the sampler. Okay, so sample the signal at a suitable rate. Okay, so there is a sampler. The message M of t is passed through the sampler. Of course, when you do the sampling of any signal, it is assumed that you do it at a sufficient rate so that you don't lose information and you know what that rate is. Okay, so the Nyquist rate. So you do the sampling at Nyquist rate. So the signal M of t has a bandwidth, let's say M of t has a bandwidth of capital W. Then you must use a sampling rate at least equal to 2 times of the maximum frequency, 2 W samples per second. So that is the Nyquist rate. In fact, it is also desirable that if you are sampling at 2 W samples per second, you make sure that M of t does not have any components above W. So you should make sure that M of t should not have any component beyond capital W, or other way around also holds. If you don't do that, you are going to have some kind of distortion, okay, with which you are familiar. In case if your message signal contains the frequency component which is higher than W, and if you do the sampling at 2 W samples per second, then you'll get some kind of distortion, and that distortion is called aliasing distortion. The high frequency component will pose as a low frequency component. That is called aliasing distortion. Okay, for example, the case of your voice signal. Okay, let us take it. Voice signal does contain components even beyond 4 kilohertz, right? But for most purposes, the quality of voice signal hardly suffers if you were band limited within 3.3 kilohertz or so. Therefore, we can say that we can sample at twice the maximum component. Which is perfectly fitting into 4 kilohertz, and therefore you sample at 8000 samples per second. But then you must make sure that the voice signal before being sampled is low pass filtered. Low pass filtered with a cutoff frequency of 4 kilohertz. Okay, whose bandwidth is about 4 kilohertz or less, or between 3.3 to 4 kilohertz. That is the cutoff frequency of your low pass filter. It may contain components of higher frequencies which may not be interest to us. But if we allow the frequency component which is higher than 4 kilohertz, then those frequency will cause aliasing distortion which we don't want. After sampling the signal, the most important step that you carry out in pulse code modulation is that of quantization. Okay, you do the quantization. Okay, we will soon see what a quantizer does, and immediately following that quantization there is another block called an encoder. These three building blocks are the key components of a pulse code modulation. Okay, so the main function of the quantizer is to take each sample and represent it in one of the prefixed number of levels. Prefixed number of levels. I will show you in a diagram in very soon. Okay, that is unlike the sample value which can take any value over an infinite range. The quantizer converts this into or transforms this continuous valued variable into a discrete valued variable. For example, let's say this is your voice signal like this. Now the moment you do the sampling, first of all, before sampling, this voice signal is continuous time and continuous amplitude. Okay, the amplitude also continuously changing and time also continuously changing. Okay, so both amplitude as well as time are continuous variables. The moment you do the sampling, then time is discrete. Originally, initially x-axis also continuous and the y-axis also continuous. Both are continuous variables. That means time is continuous and amplitude also continuous. The moment you do the sampling, then what happens, this guy, if you pass it through the sampler, then what is going to happen is time will be discrete. What about the amplitude? Amplitude is still continuous. Okay, suppose you sample this value, so let's say 2.113245 like that, keep on goes. So I cannot represent this continuous value in digital form. Somehow I need to round off. That job is done by your quantizer. Okay, therefore the continuous valued variable into a discrete valued variable. So the job of quantizer is to convert a continuous valued variable. Here variable, what is a variable? Amplitude. Amplitude into a discrete valued variable. Or I can say amplitude. So that's what your quantizer is doing that. Why do we need quantizer? Because if it is continuous, then I cannot represent. Okay, it has infinite number of digits. okay, continuous value over an infinite range. So that is the reason we put a quantizer after sampler. Okay, so I think it is best illustrated by means of this picture. Maybe I'll draw one more time. So I have a voice signal like this. Okay, so let's say this is your continuous time and a continuous valued signal. This is the value, this value is continuous, and this is the time axis, and this time axis also continuous. Okay, so it is continuous both in time as well as in amplitude. Okay, continuous both in time and as well as amplitude. The first thing that you do is sample it. We are talking about sampling at Nyquist rate, and let's say these are the let's say these are the samples. You take the samples like this at a regular interval like that. Okay, that these are the samples that you have obtained after sampling, and these are the values that you have after sampling. Okay, now these values which I maybe I'll put this color, these values are continuous, they are not discrete. Okay, these values lie on continuous axis, continuous amplitude axis. What you now do is assign each of this sample value to one of these discrete levels. So let me draw some discrete levels like this, like that. Maybe I can use a different color. Maybe I can use some other not like this. Okay, yeah, so I can use one line like this. These are discrete levels like this. Okay, so you just round off. Okay, so this point, what you do, maybe I'll enlarge this point, you round off to this one. This point you bring back to this value, and this value you bring it to this value, like that. Maybe I'll draw one more figure instead of that, like this. Okay, now these are my discrete levels. Okay, let's say this is 2 volt, 4 volt, 6 volt, like that, or you can take 1 2 3 4 also, not an issue. You can take one, maybe I can change the grid view so that I can get more accurate values. Okay, like that. My lines are not straight. Oh my god, it has gone somewhere else. Okay, like this, like that. Draw the lines like this. So this is 1 volt, 2 volt, 3 volts, 4 volts, 5 volts, 6 volts, and 7 volts. Let me enlarge. Now you take the samples. Maybe let me take one sample here, then second sample here, third sample here, fourth samples here, then fifth samples here, like that. You take n number of samples. Okay, like this you take samples at a regular interval. Okay, For example, if you take this sample is close to this line. So this value is a continuous value. This value is a continuous value. You just round off to this guy. Okay. Oh my god. Yeah. So this value is rounded to this value, right? So that's what your quantizer will do. So this is a continuous value. And this one is discrete value. For example, let's say this is 4.87295 like this, then you round off this to 5 like that. Similarly, you take this value and this value is, let's say, 4.6 something, 6784 like that, then this is round off to this value, again 5 volts. Let's say this value is somewhat let's say 3.7482 like that, then this is round off to this point. This point is 4 volts like that. So that's what generally your quantizer will do. And this is your analog signal, voice signal. And therefore we will be transmitting not the actual sample value. Okay, so this is the actual, or let me draw one more time. This figure is very clumsy like this. Let's say this is the actual sample value, but you are transmitting this value. Okay, this is rounded to this one. This is the actual sampled value. Okay, and this is the approximate value. So we will be transmitting not the actual values but the levels to which these sample values are close, and these levels are discrete in nature. Okay, they are discrete in nature. Further, the leveled output which are coming out of the quantizer are not transmitted as such. Okay, one could do that, but if you do that, what is going to happen? Instead of PCM, what you get is a quantized PAM. Okay, so output of quantizer sampler, then output of the sampler is given to quantizer. The output of quantizer you can directly transmit. Okay, not an issue. If you transmit directly, then what you are generally actually transmitting is digitized PAM. Okay, pulse amplitude modulation. I mean quantized pulse amplitude modulation. It is not pulse code modulation. Okay, if you want to transmit the quantizer output directly, you could do that, not an issue. It would be, you see, the sampler output is normal analog pulse amplitude modulation. Okay, but quantized analog pulse modulation scheme. So after the quantizer, it becomes some kind of quantized pulse code modulation scheme. So this is going to be quantized pulse pulse amplitude modulation. And even this quantized pulse amplitude modulation could be regarded as some kind of a digital pulse modulation scheme because of the process of quantization. The output of the quantizer is still called digital pulse modulation. The reason is you have quantized. Here the amplitude is continuous, right? That continuous amplitude is converted into discrete amplitude. That is why this is called a digital modulation or digital pulse amplitude modulation. But before the sampler, both time and amplitude are continuous. Okay, After sampler, time is discretized, but amplitude is not discretized. It is continuous. And that continuous is digitized by quantizer. So that is why the output of quantizer is also called a digital pulse amplitude modulation scheme, PAM. Digital PAM. But usually it is preferred that instead of transmitting the output of quantizer directly, that is instead of transmitting it in the quantized pulse amplitude modulation form, we carry out some encoding of each of these levels and transmit finally in the binary form. Ultimately, in digital communication, we would like to work on it in the form of binary. Therefore, the output of the quantizer is given to encoder. The encoder converts this discrete value into binary value. Suppose if you get 4 volts, this 4 volt will be converted into binary number. Let's say I am going to use 4 digits, then 0100 like that. If you have 6 volts, then it will be 0110. That's it, like that. Okay, so the job of the encoder is simply to introduce a binary representation to each of these quantized levels or discrete levels, and typically the binary representation will use a certain number of bits in the word. So here I have taken 4. Okay, here also I have taken 4. It depends on number of levels which you are going to use. For example, if the it is my signal like this, how many levels you are going to use? Let's say 1, 2, 3, then 4. You have only 4 levels, then 2 bits sufficient. 2 bits are sufficient to represent these 4 levels. This one you represent 0 0, or you can say this is 0. No problem. Let is 1, and this 2 is 0 1, and 3 you encode 1 0, and this you encode 1 1. That's it. 0 0 0 1 1 0 1 1. In case if you have like this, then 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 like this. 0 1 2 3. Let it be 1 2 3. 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 like that. Then you use 0 0 0. 3 bits are enough to represent these 8 levels. So depending on the number of levels, you need number of binary digits. That's it. And this is called a word. These 3 bits together is called a word. So each word represent the quantizer output level. Okay, and these bits together form a word, and those words are transmitted in the form of sequence of binary pulses. So the PCM output that we have got is really a binary pulse representation. So pulse code modulation output is a sequence of binary numbers, but anyway this binary number doesn't make any sense as far as a communication engineer is concerned. We would like to talk in terms of voltages and currents. For example, I want to transmit 4 6 8 and 9. Then how can I represent 4? 0 1 0 0, and 6 will be 0 1 1 0, and 8 will be 1 0 0, and 9 will be 1 0 0 1. Now I have taken this 4 6 8 and 9 and represented each of them by a 4-bit word. This is one word, and this is second word, third word, and fourth word. Okay, they are 4-bit words. Assuming that my total number of levels is only 16. So if you have 16 number of levels, then 4 bits are enough to represent these 16-bit levels. Okay, now let me encode this guy. So 0 1 0, again 0. Okay, 0 1 0 0. This is for 4, and then 0 1, again 1, then 0. Okay, this is for 8. Here 0 I'm sorry, 6, 1 1 0, and then now 8, right? So you put 1, then 0 0 0. This is 1 0 0 0, and this one is 8, and 1 0 0, and again 1. That's all. So this is sequence of pulses. So finally the output of my PCM is a sequence of pulses that we are going to transmit. Now the number of bits that you will require for representation will depend on how many levels of quantization I have. If I have 16 levels of quantization, I need 4 bits. If I have 32 levels of quantization, then I need 5 bits, and so on and so forth. Okay, so here we assumed that we have only 16 levels of quantization, then each sample would require 4 bits for representation. Therefore, we have a sequence of binary digits like this, sequence of binary digits, which eventually have to transmit. So how will it transmit? In terms of voltages and currents. And this is the representation. Okay, and this is a representation for 4, and this is a representation for 6, 8 and 9. And finally what you may transmit is a pulse sequence or sequence of pulse like this. So these are the binary coded pulses. Binary coded pulses that form the output of the PCM system. Binary coded pulses from the output of PCM system, and which are finally transmitted onto the channel. Now you may ask a question, why should I choose this kind of pulse representation? See, there are many ways of doing it. Okay, I could represent 1 by positive pulse like this, or I could represent 1 like this, right? So this I can represent 1, or this I can represent 1, whichever representation is more optimal for me, I can choose it. Okay, so or I can choose one as half duration pulse like this, or I can choose half duration pulse like that. It's all depends on me how I am going to design it. Okay, so anyway, we will discuss various possible representation of this digits onto a pulses, and that's what we will discuss when we talk about the topic called line coding. So there are various methods which are used to represent the binary digits, zeros and ones, sequence of zeros and ones. And depending on which representation you use will decide the actual nature of your pulse train, and that you are finally have to transmit. Okay, so this pulse code modulation is conceptually a very simple process. Okay, so the PCM is the process of converting an analog signal into a binary representation, and it is a very simple process, conceptually simple process, but implementation wise it is much more complex than, let's say, delta modulator. PCM is more complex than delta modulation from the point of view of implementation, because you have to really build an analog to digital converter. So the implementation of a quantizer is a not trivial operation. Okay, I am sure you are all familiar with that fact. However, at the moment we are interested in looking at not the implementation of the A to D converter, with which we are already quite familiar in some other courses, how to convert an analog to digital signal or A to D converter. But as far as digital communication is concerned, I mean about the communication aspects of pulse code modulation, the first thing that we like to look at is the bandwidth requirement of PCM system. How much bandwidth do I need to transmit this pulses? Bandwidth requirement of PCM. This is the first thing that we would like to address. Okay, bandwidth requirement of PCM. As I said, to start with, I have an analog signal. Let's say m of t of bandwidth is equal to capital W. The question is, do I continue to use a bandwidth which is of the order of W, or do I eventually end up using a bandwidth which is much larger? So that is the question we would like to address and work out quantitatively how much it is. To do that, let us introduce a few parameters of the quantizer. Okay, so let us assume that the quantizer associated with the PCM system of interest has q number of quantization levels. Q number of quantization levels. Okay, and for convenience, let us assume that Q is chosen to be, my Apple Pencil has down now, just 30 seconds. So for convenience, let us assume that Q is chosen to be a power of 2. Okay, so why should I take a power of 2? Because the number of quantization levels will be represented in terms of binary. If I choose Q is equal to 4, then I need 2 bits to represent 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 0, 1, 1. If I choose Q is equal to 8, then I need 3 bits to represent, right? If the number of quantization levels are 8, then I need only 3 bits. In case if I take 7, then what is going to happen? I can choose 3 again, but one level will be wasted. Okay, suppose if I take 5, then what is going to happen? So I need 3 to represent only one extra quantization levels. Okay, 3 bits I need to spend. So always wise to choose the number of quantization levels to be a power of 2. Okay, so it will be convenient to do so because we have to eventually give a binary representation to each quantization level. So efficiently, if you do that by choosing Q is equal to 2 to the power n, where n is an appropriately chosen integer, which implies that n will be the number of bits in a word. In case if Q is equal to 16, then n is equal to 4, number of bits in a word that will be required to represent each level. So the encoder will have to use a word length of n bits. Word length is equal to n bits. And that's an implication. And n is obviously equal to, how will you get n? Log to the base 2 q. Okay, so and these many pulses are needed to represent each samples. Okay, small n number of bits or pulses. Pulses or bits are needed to represent what? Each sample. Okay, now the next question is, how many samples are you taking in a second? As per the Nyquist criteria, we need to take 2 times of maximum frequency or maximum frequency component in the message signal. Okay, let's say your message signal m of t has bandwidth W, then what will be the minimum sampling rate that you will have to use? The sampling rate is minimum sampling rate. Minimum sampling rate is equal to 2 times of W. So total number of samples in a second is 2W samples. Okay, this is my sampling rate. Now what determines the bandwidth of pulse? Okay, so now how many bits do I need now? 2 times W number of samples, and each samples requires n number of bits. Therefore total number of bits per second is equal to 2nW. Now what determines the bandwidth of pulse train? Because these bits are represented by like this pulse train, right? Like this. Now how do you find out the bandwidth of these pulses? Okay, I need to quantize in terms of bandwidth of the digital pulses. So roughly you will say, ideally we all appreciate that we are talking about an ideal pulse train. Okay, so ideal pulse train means short pulse train like this. Okay, in no time it increases, abrupt transition, but in real it will not be like this. It slowly increases and comes down like this. There will be some rising time and there will be some falling time, TF and TR. But ideal pulse means TF is equal to 0 and TR also is equal to 0. With no time it increases from 0 level to a finite amplitude. So whenever you have an ideal pulse time, what is the bandwidth? If you recall from your Fourier transform, the bandwidth is infinity. Okay, so the bandwidth is going to be infinity. If you take a rectangle pulse like this, if you find the Fourier transform of this pulse, then you'll get a sync pulse like that. And this pulse goes up to infinity. So in that case, the bandwidth of the rectangular pulse or the pulse train is going to be infinity. So we are talking about some more practical measure of bandwidth here. Okay, we are not talking about ideal condition. We are talking about the practical measure of bandwidth than the theoretical method. That is, the Fourier extends the span of Fourier transform of the signal. That will be of course infinite. We are perhaps talking about the bandwidth in which most of the energy lies. In case if you take this sync pulse, most of the energy lies in the main lobe. This is called the main lobe. This is first side lobe, second side lobe and third side lobe. So second side lobe, third side lobe and fourth side lobe contains very less amount of energy or less amount of power. That means insignificant amount of power. But the main lobe contains majority of the energy. Okay, so roughly generally people will say that if you have a pulse of let's say the duration of tau seconds. Okay, now the pulse width is tau. Okay, so the Fourier transform of this is a sync function. If you take Fourier transform, then you'll get a sync function. And one rule of thumb is most of the energy lies in the main lobe of the sync function. So if you draw the sync function, let's say like this. So most of the energy, that means very high amount of energy lies in the main lobe of the sync function. So therefore if you consider this as the bandwidth, that is more or less a rough estimate. Okay, and this width is going to be 1 over tau. Okay, whose width happens to be the reciprocal of the pulse width. Okay, so does it make reasonable sense? Roughly we can say that if you are using a pulse with each pulse having a width of approximately tau seconds, then the bandwidth associated with that pulse train will be of the order of 1 over tau hertz. That is, this main lobe contains most of the energy of the pulse train. Okay, and this guy you can neglect, no need to consider, okay. That is, most of the energy of the pulse train will lie in this 1 by tau bandwidth. So it is essentially a convenient measure of bandwidth rather than a precise measure of the bandwidth. Suppose if somebody asks what is the exact bandwidth, then the bandwidth is infinity. But a convenient measure is 1 by tau hertz. So if your sampling rate is 2W, and I am going to represent each sample by how many pulses? N number of pulses. So pulse rate at which you have to transmit pulses is going to be 2n capital W pulses. Now let us quantize this in more formal way. So as I said, Q is number of quantization levels, and Q is generally chosen as to be 2 to the power n, where n is integer. The number of bits must be integer, right? It can't be something else. And from this, n is going to be log to the base 2 of Q. Okay, this many pulses are needed to represent each sample. Needed to represent each sample. Okay, now we have the analog signal m of t, and the bandwidth is W. This is bandwidth of m of t. Now as per the Nyquist criteria, what is the sampling rate? Sampling rate is equal to 2 times capital W, and each sample is represented by n number of bits. Therefore pulse rate is 2n capital W. Therefore maximum pulse duration tau is equal to 1 over 2n W. So if I am using a pulse train of this rate 2n W, okay, what is the maximum pulse width I can have? Obviously of the same duration. So maximum pulse width I can have is 1 over 2n W. Okay, so the maximum pulse duration tau is of the order of 1 over 2n W, and therefore 1 over 2n W will be the minimum bandwidth, because maximum pulse duration, right? So therefore the minimum bandwidth is equal to 2n W. Sometimes we write 2 times some constant k times n W. Okay, and this is the lower bound, some kind of lower bound. I'll tell you what this k stands for. Okay, because in our discussion we assumed most of the energy lies in the main lobe. If somebody comes, no, I wanted to consider the second side lobe also. So in that case, the definition changes. This 1 over tau changes. That is why we included this k, this constant k here. Okay, so in general, if you want to be more precise, this is a rough figure. Okay, because we assumed most of the energy lies in the main lobe. But now somebody comes, no, I want to know exact more precisely. Then the bandwidth will be some constant k times 2nw, where k is an appropriate constant of bandwidth, depending on what definition of bandwidth they precisely use. I used in this discussion like most of the energy lies in the main lobe. But if somebody comes and says, I want to consider this is my bandwidth, then appropriately this k value will be changed. So this k may vary between a factor of 0.35 to 1.2 or something like that, depending on the precise definition that one may use. That is, what is the definition of bandwidth one is going to use. Okay, this 2nw is just the rate of pulses that are to be sent, but the bandwidth required for will depends on the definition of the how you are going to define the bandwidth. Are you going to consider only this main lobe or second side lobe also? Okay, so as I said, this is the lower bound. If your pulse width happens to be less than 1 or 2 nw, which you can use if you wish, you will end up using more bandwidth. But you can't use bandwidth less than this 2 nw. So this is some kind of lower bound on bandwidth that the PCM system must be associated with. Okay, so it is a lower bound. In other words, I can say this 2kNw as 2 times k times w times this n. I can write it as log q to the base 2. Okay, so this is my bandwidth. Now the larger the number of quantization levels, what is q here? Quantization levels. Quantization levels. If number of quantization levels are increased, then the bandwidth requirement also will also be increased, right? The larger the number of quantization levels you have, the finer the quantization you can carry out. Of course, that will lead to a more accurate representation of your signal, but it will also introduce a larger bandwidth sacrifice. It will also require larger bandwidth for transmitting the signal. Okay, for example, let's say I have a signal like this. Now if I take the sample like this, okay, let me take the sample. The middle point is here somewhere. This is 1 and this is 2. And if I take the sample, this point, then what is going to happen? Let's say this is 0.4 and this 0.4 is 1.4 and this 1.4 is rounded to 1 volt. So what is the error in this? 0.4 volts. In case if I take the sample here, then let's say maybe I'll come back. Let me take the sample here, one more sample, and this is, let's say, 1.5 or 1.58 something, 1.58. Then this will be rounded to 2 volts. So the error is 0.42, right? So the error will be more if I use 1 volt and 2 volt as the quantization levels. Now instead of that, what I am going to do is like this. Let me take one more level here. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, or else let me take like this. This is 0.5, 1, 2, I'm sorry, 1.5, 2, like that. Now if this is, what did I say previously? Yeah, 0.4. Let's say this is 1.4 volts. This 1.4 will be rounded to 1.5 volts. Now the error is 0.1 volts, right? and here what did it do? Let's say if we take the sample, this is 1.52, and this one previously I rounded to 2 volts. Now I am going to round it to 1.5. Therefore here the error is 0.02 volts. Here the number of quantization level is, let's say 1, 2, 3, and let's say 4. Here Q is equal to 4 levels, and if I wish to use, then this is a scenario. Now here if I wish to use 8 levels, 1.51, 1.52, then 2.5, 3, 3.5, 4. How many levels? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 levels. Here Q is equal to 8. If we increase the number of quantization levels, then the error will be less, right? So, but what is the price you paid off? The number of bits needed to represent these quantization levels are increased. Here I need 3 bits, but here I need only 2 bits. In this case the bandwidth is 2NW, 2 times 2 times W, and here the bandwidth is 2 times 3 times W. So here 6W and here 4W. So the bandwidth requirement will be increased if you increase the number of quantization levels. But ultimately what you are achieving is you are getting more accurate representation of your signal. See here the accuracy is very, very high here. Here only 0.1 volt difference, and here 0.02 volt difference. So you will get more accuracy, right? The larger the number of quantization levels you have, the finer the quantization you can carry out. Okay, therefore if you have more number of quantization levels, and that will lead to a more accurate representation of your signal, but it will also introduce a larger bandwidth sacrifice. Okay, so it requires larger bandwidth for transmitting the signal. That is the price one has to pay. And in this expression where k is a suitable constant, and this constant will depend on the precise nature of definition that you use for understanding what bandwidth is. Like for example, in our argument we said that a pulse may consider to have a bandwidth equal to the width of the main lobe of the sinc function associated with it in the frequency domain. This is one possible definition. Somebody comes and says, okay, some other definition, like you could use some other definition. For example, he comes and say like, you could decide to use 99% of energy bandwidth, or the bandwidth in which the portion of the bandwidth, or that is 99% of the total signal energy lies or power lies. So in which case your value of k will turn out to be different. But nevertheless, the order of magnitude will not change. This is one aspect of PCM when talk about or using it for digital communication. Okay, so that's all about bandwidth requirement of pulse code modulation. Now the other aspect is that the process of quantization introduces errors, right? See, I told you here this 0.4 volt is an error, and here 0.42 amount of error, and here 0.02 volt error amount, and this 0.1. Okay, therefore it introduces error, and this error is called quantization noise. Okay, and this error is introduced at the transmitter itself. Okay, so this is unlike other communication process. So you don't introduce noise at the transmitter deliberately, right? Recall from your amplitude modulation or frequency modulation or phase modulation, where we don't introduce noise at the transmitter. But here, because of this quantization process, you are introducing some error, and this error is called noise, something called quantization noise. So we have to understand how much noise we are going to introduce. So how to quantify that quantization noise? Okay, so it seems you are not sending the precise value of the sample. You can't, in fact. okay, because it has infinite number of digits. It is a continuous value. Continuous value you cannot transmit by using digital representation. You need infinite number of binary bits to represent the continuous value. Suppose you sample, and this sample value is, let's say, 1.66784523, like this. You need it keep on goes. How do you represent this guy binary? In binary, you need no huge number of bits, binary bits. So huge number of binary bits means you need huge number of pulses. So huge number of pulses means the bandwidth will be very large. Okay, so this is my precise value. So you cannot transmit the precise value as it is. So what you do, you generally approximate this guy to 1.5 volts like this. Okay, so only an approximation of it in terms of the quantization you are actually transmit. Therefore, you are actually introducing or incorporating certain error in this representation directly at the transmitter itself. Okay, so in the process of quantization and encoding. Therefore, in the process of encoding, which may sound to be an undesirable thing to do if you use precise amplitude value. But the advantage is, in spite of this error that we introduced, this error is a controlled amount of error. So whenever you have some control, then you can get it back, not an issue. If something is not under your control, then you cannot do something on it. Controlled amount of error. If something is under control, nothing to worry. Okay, so controlled amount of error which you can control by looking at our requirement and deciding on how many quantization levels I must use. Suppose if the error is somewhat higher, then you can go and increase the number of quantization levels. In case if you are constrained with bandwidth or some other thing, then you can reduce the number of bits or number of quantization levels. So the advantage that I get is that of digital communication, that is I am able to eliminate noise which is introduced later in the channel. So it's a very significant thing. So one can achieve in the digital communication. Okay, but nevertheless we must be aware of this fact that the process of quantization is a noisy one. Is a noisy one, and we must also be able to figure out how much noise is being introduced. Okay, we need to quantify that, how much energy is being introduced. Okay, so this is my noise error. This error is called noise, quantization noise, and because of this voltage, how much power, noise power is introduced or error power. Therefore, the next topic of interest to us therefore is to be able to calculate how much quantization error or how much quantization noise is being introduced. So you can call quantization error, or you can also call it as quantization noise. Okay, so that we will discuss in the next class. So let me stop at this point. Thank you very much.